The real story of how prison gangs run the inside world. Subscribe, like, and drop a comment if you're ready to step inside a world most people never see, a place where silence keeps you alive, loyalty is currency, and the real power doesn't wear a badge. The prison siren wailed at 2:17 a.m., a sound so sharp it seemed to slice the dark in half. Guards ran toward cell block D, boots hammering concrete, radios crackling with panic codes. An inmate lay sprawled beneath the tear stays, face down, blood threading its way across the floor like a map no one wanted to read. His name was Marcus Slim Alvarez, a mid-level dealer from South Texas doing 10 years for distribution. On paper, he was nothing special. Inside these walls, he was a messenger. By the time the medical team arrived, Slim was already gone. No weapon in sight. No witnesses willing to speak. Just a symbol carved into the underside of the stair rail above his body, a simple mark, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. The kind of mark that meant the killing wasn't random. It was a message. Detective Erin Walsh stood outside the prison gates an hour later, breath fogging in the cold. She'd worked organized crime for 12 years and thought she'd seen every variation of brutality the system could produce. But prison murders were different. They didn't happen unless someone allowed them to. Inside, nothing moved without permission. Walsh was joined by Special Agent Daniel Price from the state's Corrections Intelligence Unit. He had the look of a man who slept with one eye open. "They are calling it an inmate-on-inmate altercation," he said flatly. Walsh didn't blink. "And you don't believe that?" Price shook his head. Slim Alvarez wasn't a fighter. He was a courier. You kill a courier when you want to shut mouths or start a war. They were escorted through metal doors that slammed shut behind them, each echo a reminder that once you stepped inside, the rules changed. The air smelled of bleach and old anger. In Block D, inmates leaned over rails, eyes bright with interest, faces carefully blank. Silence pressed down like a weight. The warden offered condolences and platitudes, insisting the facility was under control. Walsh barely listened. Her eyes traced the tears, the corners, the blind spots. She noticed how certain inmates stood relaxed, while others kept their backs to the wall. Hierarchy, invisible but absolute. Slim's cell was neat. Too neat. His bunk was tight, his letters stacked, his commissary untouched. On the wall above his bed, someone had scratched a calendar. One date was circled twice. 2 days from now. What was he counting down to? Walsh asked. Price flipped through Slim's file. Transfer hearing. Protective custody request. He claimed he had information about an extortion ring operating inside 3 state facilities. Walsh felt the chill settle in her spine. So he was trying to get out. Or trying to talk. They interviewed inmates one by one. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Eyes down, shoulders tense, rehearsed ignorance. Didn't see nothing. Was asleep. Slim kept to himself. The lies were uniform, polished by fear. Then there was Raymond Brooks Holloway, an older inmate with wire-rimmed glasses and a reputation as the unofficial librarian. He asked for Walsh by name. "I can't say much," Brooks whispered through the slot, hand shaking. But Slim wasn't freelancing. He worked for the council. Walsh leaned in. "What council?" Brooks swallowed. "The shot callers. Aryan factions, Southern crews, street gangs that shouldn't even speak to each other. They meet through proxies. They control phones, drugs, protection, even guards who need money. The prison's just a front. The real business is outside." Price stiffened. "You're saying prison gangs are coordinating across racial lines?" Brooks gave a thin smile. "Money doesn't care about color." Before Walsh could ask more, the guard cleared his throat loudly. Brooks leaned back, eyes distant. Slim tried to disappear with something that didn't belong to him. He said softly, "That mark you saw, it means debt paid." "Oh, debt denied." "Depends on who's sending it." That night, Walsh couldn't sleep. She spread photos across a motel desk, crime scene images, gang symbols, commissary logs. A pattern emerged. Slim had been moving money through inmate accounts. Tiny transfers that added up to something massive. A laundering pipeline using families on the outside, shell businesses, and encrypted phones smuggled in through the kitchen. The next morning, the prison announced a lockdown. Rumors rippled through the cell blocks like electricity. 2 inmates had been assaulted overnight in a different wing. Both survived. Both belonged to rival crews. "This is pressure," Price said. "Someone's testing the lines." They obtained a warrant to search the maintenance tunnels beneath Block D, a place most guards avoided. The tunnels were narrow and damp, lined with old cables and shadows that seemed to move on their own. Halfway down, Walsh's flashlight caught a glint behind a loose panel. Inside was a burner phone, wrapped in plastic. On the screen, a single unsent message blinked. "If I go down, the ledger goes up. Locker 317. Walsh's heart pounded. "There's a ledger." Price's voice was tight. And if Slim hit it, he didn't have time to tell anyone where. They rushed back upstairs, weaving through corridors buzzing with agitation. Locker 317 was in the old vocational wing, closed after budget cuts. The door creaked as they forced it open. Inside, they found a false bottom. Beneath it sat a thick envelope and a flash drive. Walsh opened the envelope first. Photographs spilled out, guards exchanging packages. Inmates using phones, money drops outside the prison gates. Names were written on the backs. Some belonged to known gang leaders. Others belonged to people with clean records and public smiles. Then Price plugged in the flash drive. The first file opened to a spreadsheet titled Inside World. As the numbers loaded, Walsh realized the scale of what they were looking at. This wasn't just corruption. It was an economy, and Slim Alvarez hadn't been trying to escape it. He'd been trying to expose it. But before they could scroll further, the lights cut out. In the sudden darkness, a voice echoed from the hallway, calm, amused, and far too close. "You shouldn't have opened that." Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the corridor in a sickly red glow. The voice echoed again, closer now, its owner unseen. Walsh felt her pulse hammer as instincts took over. She grabbed the envelope and flash drive, shoving them into her jacket just as boots thundered past the vocational wing door. "Lockdown breach," someone shouted. Metal gate slammed. Alarms layered over each other until the sound became unbearable. Price drew his weapon, scanning the darkness. "That voice wasn't an inmate," he said. "Too relaxed." They were escorted out under heavy guard, the warden's face pale and tight. "This facility is compromised," he admitted in a low voice. "I'm requesting immediate state intervention." By noon, the story was already being buried. A press release described isolated incidents and praised the quick response of staff. Slim Alvarez's name barely appeared. But inside the task force room miles away, the tone was very different. The ledger was real. The spreadsheet detailed a network stretching across 6 prisons in 3 states. It listed shipment schedules, code words, payover amounts, and most damning of all, initials tied to staff members' guards, kitchen supervisors, even a deputy warden. Millions of dollars moved through commissary fraud, drug distribution, and extortion of inmates' families. Prison gangs weren't just surviving incarceration. They were running an enterprise. Walsh stared at one name highlighted in yellow. Raymond Holloway. Books. "He wasn't just a librarian," Price said. "He's the accountant." Before they could plan their next move, Price's phone buzzed. His expression changed. "Books is dead." The official report came an hour later. Apparent suicide. Found in his cell during lockdown, sheet tied to the bars. Walsh slammed her hand on the table. "That's impossible. He was under observation." Price nodded grimly, which means someone wanted him silenced fast. As if on cue, another call came in. A corrections officer involved in the ledger had failed to show up for his shift. His car was found abandoned near a river. No body. Just blood on the driver's seat. The investigation was no longer contained. It was bleeding outward. Walsh requested protective detail. It was denied. Too many names on the ledger were too powerful, too connected. Instead, she was advised to proceed cautiously. That night, she returned to her apartment to find the door unlocked. Nothing was missing, but everything felt disturbed. On her kitchen table lay a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. Curiosity kills careers. Her phone rang as she read it. A block number. "You opened something that doesn't belong to you," the voice said. The same calm tone from the prison hallway. "This doesn't end well for people who can't mind their own business." Walsh steadied her breath. You killed Slim. A soft chuckle. Slim killed himself when he forgot who he worked for. The line went dead. The next morning, Price didn't show up. Walsh called his phone again and again until it went straight to voicemail. By afternoon, she was sitting across from Internal Affairs, watching two men she'd never met flip through her notes with detached interest. Your partner acted without authorization, one of them said. He accessed classified materials and may have compromised an ongoing intelligence operation. Walsh felt the room tilt. What are you saying? We're saying Agent Price is currently missing, and until we determine why, you are suspended from active duty. She walked out numb, the weight of it crushing her chest. In 48 hours, 2 sources were dead, 1 partner vanished, and she was sidelined. That wasn't coincidence. It was containment. Walsh made a choice then. If the system wouldn't protect the truth, she'd go around it. She drove 3 hours west of a town that barely existed on the map. There, in a trailer behind an auto shop, lived Lena Morales Slim Alvarez's older sister. The family had been warned not to speak. Walsh ignored that. Lena's eyes were rimmed red when she opened the door. They told me he deserved it, she said bitterly, that he was dangerous. He was, Walsh replied gently, but not the way they say. Inside, Lena handed over a showbox. Letters Slim had sent, written carefully, coded between mundane lines. Walsh read them slowly. Names appeared again. Dates. One phrase repeated over and over. The inside world never sleeps. There's more, Lena whispered. She pulled out a phone. This came the night he died. A video file opened. Slim's face filled the screen, bruised but defiant. If you're watching this, I'm probably dead, he said. They think killing me fixes the problem. It doesn't, because the council isn't one gang. It's all of them. They fight on the yard, but behind the scenes, they split the money. Guards are just employees. Warden too. And if you're law enforcement, trust no one. The video ended with coordinates and a name. Harlan Voss. Back in the city, Walsh ran the name through every database she could access with borrowed credentials. Voss was clean on paper. Real estate developer. Major donor to state political campaigns. His company specialized in prison-adjacent services, food supply, maintenance, telecom contracts. He built the pipeline, Walsh muttered, outside the walls. Before she could dig deeper, headlights flared outside her car. A van swerved, blocking her exit. Doors flew open. Men moved fast, faces hidden. Walsh ran. She cut through an alley, heart pounding, footsteps close behind. A hand grabbed her jacket. She twisted free, ducked into a doorway, and slammed it shut behind her. She found herself inside a church, empty except for flickering candles and a man standing at the altar. Daniel Price. He turned slowly, eyes hollow. They told me you'd come. Walsh took a step back. Where have you been? Learning the rules, he said quietly. You don't beat the inside world. You join it, or it buries you. Outside, the men's footsteps faded. Price met her gaze, voice heavy with something like regret. You need to stop, because the next name on that ledger is yours. And before Walsh could respond, he added the words that froze her blood. They already paid for you. Walsh didn't answer him right away. The church smelled of dust and old incense, a place meant for confession, not betrayal. Candlelight trembled across Price's face, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked afraid. They didn't pay for me, she said carefully. They bought you. Price's jaw tightened. You think I didn't fight it? You think I wanted this? He gestured around the empty sanctuary. They showed me the ledger before you ever saw it. Names higher than Voss. Judges. Senators, wardens, people who decide who lives where. They told me I could disappear, or disappear. Walsh took another step back, calculating distance, exits. So Slim died for nothing. No, Price said. He died too early. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, close enough to be real, far enough to be useless. Walsh realized then that this wasn't a rescue. It was a meeting arranged to end things quietly. I copied the ledger, she said, watching his eyes flicker. Before Internal Affairs locked me out. If something happens to me, it goes public. Price laughed softly. You're still thinking like an investigator. Evidence doesn't matter when the people reviewing it are on the payroll. He reached into his coat. Walsh tense, ready to run, but instead of a gun, he pulled out a phone and slid it across the pew. "Watch," he said. The video loaded instantly. It was prison footage, time-stamped that very morning. An inmate sat alone in an interview room, hands cuffed to the table. His face was older, gaunter, but unmistakable. Raymond Brooks Holloway. Walsh's breath caught. "They said he was dead." "They needed you to believe that," Price replied. "Books is their insurance policy. He keeps the real accounts. Slim tried to steal a copy. That's why he died." The video shifted. A guard entered the room, leaned down, and whispered something. Books nodded once, resigned. "They're moving him tonight," Price continued. "New identity, new facility, same job." Walsh felt the walls closing in. "And you're just letting this happen." The ledger hadn't gone public. Not fully, but pieces of it had leaked, anonymously, to journalists who knew how to read between the lines. Just enough to make powerful people nervous. Just enough to force changes without revealing the source. Price testified behind closed doors. He kept his job. Books vanished again. Officially, Detective Erin Walsh resigned due to stress. Unofficially, she became a ghost. Months passed. Then, one night, Walsh received an encrypted email. Locker 317 wasn't the only copy. Attached was a file labeled Inside World, Final. As he opened it, a familiar name appeared at the top, Daniel Price. Below it, a timestamp dated 2 weeks in the future. Walsh smiled grimly. The inside world never slept, but neither did she. And somewhere behind prison walls, as lights dimmed and doors slammed shut, a new message spread quietly from cell to cell. The council was about to lose one of its own. They thought the truth was buried behind bars. They were wrong. And if you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one.